Well, Willson Contreras was ejected again, but this time it could do a lot more damage for the Boston Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Well, last night was not pretty, folks. That's the best way for me to put it. Pretty ugly game for the Boston Red Sox. Not much, if anything at all, really went their way in this game as they took an 8-1 loss against the Nationals. And on today's show, I'm going to be talking about a few things that went wrong for this Boston Red Sox team, including the early exit of a key starting pitcher, another reliever who was DFA'd after the game after a struggling performance, and a fight that we will never forget. So obviously, when a team strings together some wins after not showing all season that it's capable of stringing together wins, that's super exciting. And the optimistic side of me wants to be like, well, we're back, never losing again. Obviously unrealistic, but you know, us fans have to find positivity when we can. And the Red Sox were winning games. They had won 5 in a row, and you knew eventually the win streak was going to stop. Was I hoping that it would continue against the Nationals? Of course, but not the Red Sox night last night. And one of the biggest storylines in this game that people will not forget is Willson Contreras getting ejected for the second night in a row, and things got really intense this time around. The benches cleared. It was a high-stakes situation, and it was exciting. It makes baseball exciting when those types of things happen. So essentially what went down here is Cade Cavalli, the Nationals' right-handed pitcher, who, by the way, absolutely shoved in this game. Red Sox offense could not get a thing going against him. They only recorded 4 hits total in this game, but only 1 came against Cavalli. I mean, the guy threw 7 scoreless innings, giving up 1 hit and 1 run that wasn't earned. So I'm still counting that for him as a scoreless outing. 13 strikeouts. So he shoved. But essentially what happened was he struck out Willson Contreras looking on a 3-2 sweeper. It was a nasty pitch. Willson knew he had no shot on it. It was the second out of the 4th inning. And then after the strikeout happened, Willson was just walking away normally back towards the dugout. And Cavalli shouted, "Sit down, boy." And you could hear it pretty clearly. I literally rewinded my game feed because I was like, did I hear that correctly? I want to make sure I did. But that was exactly what was said. And you know, Willson Contreras, if somebody says something, he's gonna fire back. He's not the type that would just let it go. He just has that intense personality that this Red Sox team needs. Burning fire that he plays with every day, and I absolutely love that about the guy. And he appeared to mouth back, "Are you talking to me?" I couldn't hear specifically what he said, but that was what it looked like was said. So then after that, Contreras started to approach Cavalli, and that's when the benches cleared. Both sides came out, and Contreras could never get to Cavalli because of the big group of people and both teams being right in the mix of things. But Contreras fired his helmet in the direction of Cavalli. So the idea was that he was trying to hit him with his helmet. You cannot do that. And as soon as you try to hit a player with a piece of equipment, that leads to a suspension. So some pushing and shoving ultimately ended up going on after that, but no punches were thrown. The game was delayed nearly 11 minutes for this. I was literally sitting there saying, wow, this is taking longer than an inning can take in this game. It was pretty insane because they were trying to figure out who would get ejected and how things went down. On top of Contreras getting ejected for the second straight night, I mean, this was automatic for him because of him trying to toss the helmet and hit the Nationals pitcher. I mean, that warrants being ejected. It was coming on the back of a night that he had been ejected for tapping his helmet as if to challenge on a check swing when they said he went and he didn't think he did. So he had already been on thin ice in this series because of being ejected the previous night. But this time he wasn't alone, unlike the night before. Nate Eaton wasn't playing in this game, but he was also ejected because it saw on the feed him pretty intensely fighting with people. And then interim manager Chad Tracy also got ejected, as did righty Miles McCollus, who started the game on Monday night. He got ejected on the Nationals side. He was the only player ejected for them. All 4 ejections came from crew chief and second base umpire Vic Carapazza. So the umpires were reviewing it for a while to see who needed to actually get ejected. It's just been a whirlwind few days for Willson Contreras, who's been pretty vocal about how unsettled he's been by the earthquakes that took place in Venezuela 6 days ago. So it's just been a really emotional time for him. So obviously his emotions are going to be running higher than normal. And yes, we've seen this with Willson before. He can get really intense on the baseball field, but tensions are high right now in general. In his first game after the earthquakes on Friday against the Yankees, Contreras took exception to inside pitches from righty Will Warren, and that also sparked a beef bench clearing incident. So there's been, in the last few days, kind of a lot that's gone on there with Contreras in terms of the intensity on the baseball field. Then came the events of Monday night, when he unloaded for a 3-run homer in the bottom of the first inning. He let out all kinds of emotions. He flipped his bat high in the air and shouted Venezuela to the dugout as he started his trot around the bases. And then he ended up crying for several minutes once he got back to the bench and was comforted by coaches and teammates. And then ultimately, an inning later, after he was called out for not checking his swing, he tapped his helmet sarcastically as if calling for an ABS challenge, and that's when first base umpire Nick Lentz got mad and ejected him. So when all that happens, you go into the next game and you say, well, this couldn't possibly be more exciting than last night, right? Sure enough, last night was Contreras getting ejected once again. And after Monday's game, he acknowledged that there isn't much of an off switch right now when thinking about the devastation in Venezuela. And he also acknowledged guilt for not being able to be there to help relief efforts. So he's definitely riding an emotional up and down right now. He's been ejected 11 times in his career and ended up being replaced at first base last night by Andrew Monasterio for the second straight night. So not a good situation, and he had every right to be mad. I want to make this clear. He had every right to be mad because the Nationals pitcher yelling "sit down, boy" was so beyond unnecessary. So beyond unnecessary. So I get him being mad. It's more the reaction. You can't start tossing helmets because in Major League Baseball, that is a rule that as soon as you start tossing equipment at others, it's a suspension. So he's going to get suspended by the league. And that's bad news for the Red Sox because he has continuously been one of this team's best hitters. He's batting .280 on the season right now with a .374 on base percentage and .529 slugging percentage. So just as the team is seemingly starting to figure things out, this has to happen, and we don't know yet how long the suspension is going to be. Major League Baseball will rewatch the incident and then figure out what's appropriate in terms of how much time he's going to miss. But when he's been the best hitter on the team all season long, it's very much not ideal when it comes to momentum for this team. And one thing I really liked that Willson did, after he got ejected in last night's game, you saw him yelling at the guys in the dugout, trying to pump them up. And that's what a good leader does. A good leader says, hey, I got to go, but give it your all and win this baseball game. So I really respect that about him. And they're going to miss, while he's gone during his suspension, that intensity and that energy that he provides and that leadership in the dugout that he provides. So definitely not ideal. Again, his reaction was warranted in terms of feeling upset about it, but the way that he handled his reaction was what was not great. So obviously not ideal. We'll have to see how long he gets suspended for, but it's definitely going to be tough, and it just puts pressure on other players to step up on the offensive side of the ball. So hopefully they are able to, but coming up, starting pitcher Connelly Early had to leave the game early last night, and what does that mean for the rotation? I love going to Red Sox games or Patriots games, Bruins, Celtics, you name it, Revolution, and watching those games live. There's nothing like being surrounded by the excitement and the fans, but the only problem is that getting tickets can feel like an absolute grind with long queues, surprise fees, prices drastically jumping at checkout. That's exactly where Game Time comes in, because Game Time is actually the app that gives you the advantage. So it's how you unlock amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps, because it's simple to use and it means you get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. And the thing I like about it is that unlike other ticketing vendors, fees are included in the price you see. So that's exactly what you pay, and you don't have a surprise price jump at checkout. The seat views feature is also huge. I can actually see the panoramic view for my exact seat before buying, which makes it so much more comforting to know that I'm going to be able to see well during the game or whatever event it is. 2 taps and it's done. No stress, no hidden fees, just great seats in minutes. That's what makes it so easy to decide last minute to hit a game. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. I don't use any other ticketing vendors anymore. I'm telling you, it's so worth it. So make sure that you take advantage the next time you're going to a live event. Well, it was an eventful night for the Red Sox last night, that's for sure. Willson Contreras getting ejected for the second straight night, and now will face suspension due to the fact that he ripped his helmet off and tried to toss it at the National starting pitcher. Not a great look by him, but he'll be missed during that suspension in the Red Sox clubhouse. He's a guy who just provides a sense of energy that the other guys on this team don't. Just a sense of intensity, and lets his emotions show. And you don't really get that from every player. And you even saw that he was trying to motivate the guys in the dugout before exiting last night's game to go into the locker room. They need that. So not having him for a bit is definitely going to hurt, but hopefully the suspension isn't too harsh and he's able to come back sooner rather than later. But another player who was a big storyline of this game was Connelly Early, and not for a good reason. He was out there shoving. He only made it through 4 innings, but he gave up 3 hits and no runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. He threw just 61 pitches, 38 of them going for strikes. And there wasn't any sort of mid-game announcement or mid-inning situation where Chad Tracy was coming to pull him. So it wasn't obvious at first, but then he just didn't come back out for the 5th. And that's when everybody was wondering, well, what's going on with Connelly Early? Why isn't he back out there? He only threw 4 innings, 61 pitches. There must be something wrong. And immediately you start to feel concerned, like, oh no, is he hurt? So then it came out that he left after 4 innings with left elbow discomfort, which is obviously not great. He's been thriving as of late along with the rest of the Red Sox rotation, and there were no visible signs that anything was wrong with him because he had held the Nats to just 3 hits and no runs early on in this game. And the Red Sox didn't exactly announce the exact reason for his departure until the 6th inning because they themselves were probably still trying to figure it out. His velocity was actually slightly above his season average on all 5 of his pitches that he showcased, which is also what made it a little bit more surprising because I would get it a little bit if his velocity dipped a lot, and then the thought would be there might be something wrong with him because he's not throwing the ball as hard, but that wasn't the case. So it was really bizarre. So that's why it came as a surprise when he got pulled. With Early's abbreviated outing, Boston had an impressive string of quality starts that was snapped at 12, 2 shy of the club record set in 1988. So that's an impressive stat in general. And I talked about on the show the other day that the starting pitching has been really solid. And that's really what's been holding this team together as of late. And a quality start is when a starting pitcher gets credited for completing at least 6 innings while allowing 3 earned runs or fewer. So the Red Sox had been doing that for 12 games in a row. That's very difficult to do. So that streak was snapped because Early didn't pitch deep enough into this game for it to be considered a quality start. And it's upsetting because in 17 starts this season, he's 7-5 with a 3.44 earned run average. Over 91 and 2/3 innings overall. He has 34 walks and 93 strikeouts. And he did face a little bit of a period of time where he was struggling, but now he's really starting to find a groove. Again, since allowing 6 earned runs on June 14th, he's allowed just 3 total runs since then in 16 innings pitched. Over the last few days, with the Red Sox being able to kind of claw their way at least back into the conversation in the AL somewhat, thanks to the 5-game winning streak, and the rotation being the reason above all else, this is obviously far less than ideal. So this is just the absolute worst thing you want to see if you're a Red Sox fan, because the rotation's already thinned out. The Red Sox could easily just bring Brayan Bello back up or turn to Patrick Sandoval, but you just never want to hear about a pitcher leaving a game due to any elbow concern in general. They have just been through so many injuries to the rotation this year, and going into the season, it felt like the Red Sox had a lot of opportunities when it came to starting pitching, just a lot of depth in that regard. And just a surplus of talented arms. And it was great because I was like, well, there are going to be guys battling for 5 spots in the rotation. But now here we are with Garrett Crochet on the IL, Brayan Bello in AAA, Johan Oviedo being put in the bullpen to begin the season and hasn't pitched in a game since March 30th due to injury. Carter Crawford still injured. Patrick Sandoval hasn't even pitched in a big league game at all this season, and not even to mention since 2024. But in the coming days, that should likely change because he's going to have to be pulled from his rehab assignment. So the Red Sox are going to have to evaluate where he's at in the next few days here. So he could be coming to contribute, but now that they're holding their breath about Connelly Early, it's definitely not ideal. The 24-year-old surprised a lot of people and earned a job in the rotation out of camp because of his stellar play in spring training. And that definitely has carried over to the regular season. So you just don't want to hear about these elbow things. And it's obviously a situation that is concerning because when you have a guy who has been pitching as well as he has, you start to run out of options to replace him that you feel like can really fill his shoes, because the Red Sox have some good pitching in AAA from a starting pitching standpoint, but not enough to where it blatantly stands out to me where I can look at a specific player and say that guy should be called up. Jack Anderson could be a choice because he did get some exposure to pitching in the majors this year. So if the Red Sox do need to bring somebody up, they could call him up. This is exactly the time now where they're supposed to be making an evaluation on Patrick Sandoval. So he could be the guy to come in and replace Connelly. Or you look at a situation where you're saying, okay, we sent Brayan Bello down to AAA because he was struggling. Can we bring him back up? Can he be trusted to produce at the major league level? Because there's a reason that we felt like he needed more work down in Worcester. So those are the types of conversations the Red Sox are going to have to start to have if Connelly Early is going to be missing extended time. Because as of right now, they don't really know yet. There's no move when it comes to sending him to the injured list because he's going to undergo further testing. And it's a possibility that it's severe and he ends up on the injured list, or it's possible that he just needs a few days rest. Maybe he skips a start to be able to recover. But for right now, he's just going to undergo more testing and kind of get evaluated further to see what the next logical move should be. So Obviously not ideal, but the best we can hope for is that it's nothing too serious and that he was just feeling some discomfort last night, but that he'll be back on track for his next start, because the other options right now aren't great. They could bank on somebody from AAA coming up to replace him and hoping that that player produces, and it's worked out well with Jake Bennett when they've called him up. He's been able to produce at a really high level, and he had a great outing his last time out against the Yankees. So that's a possibility, is that they bring up a guy like Jack Anderson and he produces in a similar way. There's also the Brian Bayo situation where it's, all right, we know he was struggling, but we don't really have another direction to go in. So we're just going to bring him up and hope that he contributes at a higher level and that he's able to be more effective than he was prior. Hopefully he's been able to mentally get himself back on track a little bit down in Worcester. Then there's Patrick Sandoval, who, again, like I mentioned, hasn't pitched in a major league game since 2024. So you don't really know what kind of pitcher he's going to be upon his return, because he's been so far removed from it for a while now that it leaves people wondering how effective he's going to be able to be upon his return. And from the outings I've seen from him during his rehab, both in Portland and in Worcester, I've seen him pitch in both of those places, chatted with him a little bit about how he's feeling, and overall he's feeling good and he's looked good on the mound in his recovery. So that's promising, but again, you don't really know with a guy that's missed that much time. And then Cutter Crawford was shut down and we don't really know when he's going to be set to return. So if Connelly does have to go on the injured list, those are looking like the likely options in terms of who they could turn to replace him in the rotation. But the bottom line is, as of right now, even though the news on Connelly hasn't been great, there's still optimism for right now until there's a reason to not be optimistic. Until the Red Sox come out and say he's going to have to be placed on the injured list, we can still hope for the best and hope it's a minor thing. So either way, let's hope Connelly is able to make his next start. And if he can't make his next start, hopefully he doesn't miss too much time. But coming up, another pitcher has been DFA'd after his performance last night. If you're into sports betting, or if you're just trying to get yourself into it, FanDuel is 100% the place to look, especially during the World Cup right now, because so many matches are high stakes now that we're at the elimination rounds, and it feels like every match has the potential for a memorable moment. I mean, one goal can completely change the energy of a game or shift momentum, and that's what makes it so fun. And FanDuel is now giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals mean more bonus bets. All you have to do is turn on your token. That's what I love about these tournaments. You can turn on a match between teams you don't normally follow, and suddenly one goal changes everything. The tension builds so quickly that you're invested before you even realize it. And now you get to benefit from each goal scored. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. I'm telling you, if you're a person who likes making lots of money, betting on different sports, FanDuel has you covered during this World Cup season, but also even after the World Cup ends. Baseball's still going to be going on. So there's a lot of new and creative bets that you can make on FanDuel. So if you want to make life-changing money, now's your opportunity to get started with it. So the Red Sox last night took kind of a beatdown against the Washington Nationals by the score of 8-1. Connelly Early, unfortunately, only went 4 innings because he was dealing with elbow discomfort, so then they had to pull him. And then Danny Coulombe, Greg Weisser, Justin Slayton, Tommy Kahnle, and Ryan Watson all pitched, and not everybody was effective. I mean, Coulombe gave up 1 run, Greg Weisser gave up 2, Justin Slayton gave up 1. Ryan Watson didn't give up any, so he was actually more effective than the other guys. But Tommy Kahnle ran into a lot of trouble. He threw 1 inning, giving up 4 hits and 4 earned runs with 1 walk, and he ended up giving up a homer. He threw 30 pitches, 19 strikes, and is now as an 8.0 ERA on the season. It was rough. I mean, a rough outing for him. Did not have it, could not put guys away. And it's tough because I really like Kahnle as an individual. I think he's a great person, served as a good mentor for a lot of the guys in Worcester, which was where I spoke to him last when he was still pitching for the Woo Sox before the Red Sox brought him up. And because he's a veteran who's pitched for a lot of different teams, he just offered a good perspective to a lot of the young guys. And he had a good head on his shoulder. And he was excited about being in Boston. And that was one of the biggest things that stood out to me about him. He always grew up rooting for the Red Sox and the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry, even though he grew up in New York. And he always felt like because his friends were all Yankees fans, he wanted to go against them. So he decided to root for the Red Sox. So I always appreciated the fact that he enjoyed what Boston was about and felt like because of the success of the franchise and just how historic of a franchise it is, that he wanted to be a part of that. So I talked to him about all of that. And he's a great person, but he ended up getting designated for assignment after last night's game. And it unfortunately was the right move because this outing showed that he just did not have it. And so he ended up being DFA'd. So if you're not a huge baseball moves follower, essentially what it means is designated for assignment. So it's a roster transaction where a player is immediately removed from the team's 40-man roster. This process clears a roster spot so that the team can then add a new player, and it puts the original player in a 7-day limbo window. So what happens during those 7 days? The team has to do one of the following. So they can trade the player, place the player on waivers, meaning that allow other teams to claim the player at that point. If the player is claimed, then the new team immediately adds the player to the 40-man roster. So if Tommy Kahnle were to go on waivers, that would give the opportunity to go to another team for him. If nobody claims that player, then they would have to go back into the system that they were coming from, and they end up being placed back in the minor league. So if the Red Sox don't trade Tommy Kahnle and they do place him on waivers, if a team doesn't claim him in that window, then he just goes back to pitching in the minors for the Red Sox. They could release a player, unconditionally cut them to make them a free agent. Because major league contracts are fully guaranteed, the original team is still on the hook for their salary if they release the player. The Red Sox straight up released Walker Buehler last year. He struggled a lot and it didn't work out, so they released him. There's also an outright assignment, which you can send the player to the minor leagues only if they clear waivers and have not accrued enough service time to refuse the assignment. So some players aren't eligible to just be optioned to the minors, Tommy Kahnle being one of those. So basically it's a situation where he'll end up back in the Red Sox system if he goes unclaimed. But it was the right move because he really struggled. He just didn't have it last night, and he was already on a short leash to begin with. The Red Sox took all the way up until they absolutely had to in order to add him to the roster from Worcester. So there wasn't really this huge desire by the Red Sox to bring him up to pitch. And as a result, now hasn't looked great his last couple outings. Obviously, last night was brutally bad, but his last outing prior to that, he wasn't exactly sharp either. So he was DFA'd, and in his spot, they called up Alec Gamboa from Worcester. And essentially, this was a move that they felt like, okay, we have an option in Worcester that we feel like can be a better choice. And Gamboa has been pitching really well for the Woo Sox. He's fired 1.2 scoreless frames across his 2 major league appearances this season, but he's given up just 2 runs in 10 AAA innings since the beginning of June. So he'll provide the Red Sox bullpen with a fresh arm and will likely be limited to low leverage work with the Red Sox, at least early on at the beginning. Another notable thing about Gamboa is that over his last 8 appearances, he's thrown 20 innings, giving up 11 hits, just 3 earned runs with 2 walks and 18 strikeouts. So we knew he was a guy that was likely towards the top of the list when the Red Sox would need bullpen depth, and now they need it more than ever because they had to DFA Tommy Kahnle, and now they need a pitcher. So now they are essentially sitting here saying, okay, we're bringing up Gamboa. We're not ready to use him at high leverage right away. But if he comes up and he contributes in the low leverage spots, maybe we'll consider moving him to high leverage. But what exactly should you know about Alec Gamboa? Because a lot of people haven't really seen him yet. And if they have in the majors, it was very brief. So he has a traditional left-handed 5-pitch mix that he uses, which is a 4-seam fastball, a sinker, a slider, a changeup, and a curveball. Those are the 5 pitches that he relies on. He relies on the fastball about 60% of the time, and it sits in the mid-90s, usually around 93 to 95 miles per hour, relying on strong vertical rise. The slider is about 30% usage, and it sits in the upper 80s, around 88 to 89 miles an hour. That serves as his primary breaking pitch to generate swings and misses. It goes along with the sinker that he uses about 5% of the time. That sits in the low 90s. This pitch primarily he uses to induce ground balls and create downward tailing action. The changeup usually travels in the mid 80s. It's used sparingly as an off-speed pitch to keep right-handed hitters off balance, but I haven't seen him use a ton of it in Worcester. He may use it a little bit more. We'll have to see. But his curveball hits the upper 70s about. It's a slower looping pitch used as a situational breaking ball. So he has a good pitch mix that he uses. And because he had been impressive down in AAA, this makes sense to where it would be the move that they would make from a pitching perspective. I truly wish Tommy Kahnle all the best. I hope he ends up somewhere and he's able to contribute, because he is a good guy and a pleasure to speak to. Served as a good mentor for the younger players. So if he has the opportunity to be a mentor elsewhere for young players on another team, that would be a great role for him. But it was time. He had been struggling, and the Red Sox definitely feel like they have other options that can be more effective. So we'll have to see how things play out for the Red Sox. But thank you so much, as always, for tuning in to Locked On Red Sox and making it your first listen of every single day. For your second listen, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much, as always. Keep the faith. Go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.